Amina stood outside the compound gate in her faded yellow dress, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her headscarf. The hem of her long gown brushed the dry red earth already stained from her long walk from the village. She had borrowed her cousin's shoes, but they were a size too big, and they made her stumble a little as she waited for someone to let her in. It was her first time in the city, in Nairobi, where things moved too fast and people barely looked at you unless you had something they wanted. But Amina wasn't here to be noticed. She was here because of Kweku, the man who told her she was different, the one who said he loved her just the way she was, soft-spoken, untouched, and from humble roots. The large black gate creaked open, and a tall house help appeared. She eyed Amina from head to toe, her gaze stopping at the worn-out bag hanging from her shoulder. "You're the village girl?" she asked with a raised brow. Amina nodded slowly. "Yes. I'm here to see Madame Nyasha, Kweku's mother." The maid didn't bother hiding her smirk. "Come inside, but be careful where you walk. Madame doesn't like dust on her tiles." Inside, the house smelled of imported perfumes and freshly polished wood. The living room was bigger than her entire hut back home. Gold-framed photos lined the walls, all of Kweku's siblings in their best clothes, in countries she had only read about in magazines. She suddenly felt very small. She hadn't even finished looking around when a voice sharp as a blade sliced through the air. "So you're the little girl who thinks she's good enough for my son?" There stood Madame Nyasha, Kweku's mother, tall, draped in expensive kente, her arms crossed, eyes full of disgust. She didn't offer a seat, she didn't smile. Amina bowed politely. "Good afternoon, Ma." "Spare me." Nyasha waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. "I asked my son to find a wife, not adopt a charity case." Amina's face flushed with heat. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Nyasha walked in a slow circle around her, like a lioness inspecting prey. "You think because you're untouched, you're valuable?" she scoffed. "Virgins are everywhere. I could buy one from the slums for less. What else do you have? Education? Class? A future?" "I love him," Amina said softly. "Love?" Nyasha laughed. "That's what poor girls say when they want a rich husband." Before Amina could defend herself, Kweku entered the room. His face tightened the moment he saw his mother's stance, proud, cruel, immovable. He moved beside Amina and held her hand. The gesture made Nyasha's eyes narrow even more. "You brought this to my house, Kweku? This village girl with nothing but a soft face and empty pockets?" Kweku looked his mother dead in the eye. "Yes, and I'm marrying her." Nyasha's smile vanished. "Over my dead body." There was silence. Even the maid stopped pretending to dust. Amina stared at the ground, her heart pounding like drums in a funeral march. She had never felt so small, so insulted. But what happened next? Even she didn't expect. Kweku didn't flinch. "Then maybe," he said slowly, "you should start preparing your funeral." The room turned ice cold. Madame Nyasha stared at him, stunned, as if he had just cursed her ancestors. No one had ever dared speak to her like that. Not her late husband, not her employees, and definitely not her own children. Amina's mouth went dry. Her hand trembled slightly in Kweku's. She wanted to pull away, run, escape the humiliation. But his grip tightened, grounding. "Her in place. You've lost your mind," Nyasha finally spat, stepping forward with thunder in her eyes. "All these years I raised you, gave you the best schools, the best life, and this is how you repay me? With a bush girl from a mud village." "She's more woman than all those city girls you keep parading in front of me," Kweku snapped back. "She's honest, kind, and she doesn't want my money." "That's because she doesn't understand how money works," Nyasha hissed. "Poor girls always say they don't care about wealth until they get a taste." Kweku let go of Amina's hand and stepped between them. His voice dropped, low and deadly calm. "You think I don't know you've been trying to marry me off to that minister's daughter? You only care about status, about what the neighbors say. But I'm not a deal you get to negotiate, Mama." Nyasha's face twisted with fury. "Don't you dare disrespect me for a girl who doesn't even know how to use a fork properly." Amina flinched, her eyes welling up with tears. She tried to stay quiet, but the words stung too deep. Every insult was a knife. She wanted to scream, to speak, but shame had wrapped itself around her throat like a snake. "I thought I raised a lion," Nyasha muttered bitterly. "But you're just a boy chasing a skirt." Kweku turned sharply. "No, you raised a man who can see through your greed and your poison." Nyasha gasped like she'd been slapped. She pointed a long, shaking finger at Amina. "She's tricked you. They know how to act sweet, humble. Wait until you marry her. She'll bring her whole family and suck your bank account dry." Kweku walked back to Amina and gently wiped the tears from her cheek. "If you can't respect the woman I love," he said, staring directly at his mother, "then you don't deserve to be part of our life." "You're choosing her over your own blood?" Nyasha growled. "No," he replied coldly. "I'm choosing peace over your chaos." Amina finally found her voice, soft but steady. "I didn't come here to take anything from you," she said. "I came because I believed love was enough. I see now maybe it's not." She stepped back, her heart breaking with every word. "Kweku, I can't come between you and your mother. This is too much. I don't belong here." He reached out for her, but she turned away. "Wait, Amina." "No," she whispered. "You've already done enough. But I won't let your mother tear you apart from your family because of me. I'm going." And just like that, she walked out of the mansion, barefoot now because the borrowed shoes had slipped off somewhere in the chaos. She didn't look back, but Kweku stood frozen, watching her go. He knew what he had to do. Kweku didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in his car, parked outside Amina's cousin's tiny apartment on the edge of Kybera. The moon hung low and heavy, as if it too was carrying a burden. His mind was spinning. Every word his mother said, every tear on Amina's face, each one burned into him like hot iron. His phone buzzed for the 5th time that hour. It was his mother again. He didn't even bother to check the message. He was done playing her games. Earlier that day, after Amina left, Nyasha had tried to pretend like nothing happened. She even offered him tea, like her venom hadn't just chased away the woman he loved. "You'll thank me later," she had said smugly. "That girl would have embarrassed you, you'll see." But Kweku wasn't blind anymore. For years he thought his mother's sharp tongue and judgment were just part of her being strong. He thought she was protecting him, but now he realized she was protecting her power, her control. And Amina, with all her simplicity and honesty, threatened that. It was almost 2 a.m. when a light flicked on in the apartment upstairs. Amina's silhouette appeared briefly at the window, her head bowed in prayer. That broke him. She was still praying, even after everything. Kweku opened the glove compartment and pulled out the red velvet box. He had planned to give it to her that weekend, a gold ring, simple but meaningful, passed down from his grandmother before she died, the only piece of family he respected. The next morning, Kweku walked into his mother's room with a manila envelope in hand. Nyasha was sitting by her vanity, applying cream to her already flawless skin. "You've come to your senses, she said without looking at him. He placed the envelope in front of her. "What's this?" "My resignation," he said calmly. "From the company, from your control, from you." Nyasha froze. "Excuse me? I'm leaving the family business. I'm selling my shares and moving out of this house. I've already spoken to Uncle Kamau. He's taking over my projects." "You're insane." "No," he said. "I'm finally sane." She stood up, furious. "You want to throw away your legacy for a girl?" "I'm building my own legacy now," he replied, "with someone who doesn't look at people like they're beneath her. Kweku, I already proposed to her. She hasn't accepted, but she will." Nyasha laughed bitterly. "You think you can survive out there without me? Without my money, my name?" Kweku smiled for the first time in hours. "Watch me." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "Oh, and Mama," he said without turning around, "you can keep the mansion, but don't expect grandchildren visiting any time soon." He left her standing there, clutching the envelope like it was poison. That evening he showed up again at Amina's doorstep, this time not in a suit, not in a fancy car. Just a man with no title, no wealth, just love. Amina opened the door slowly, her face pale and tired. She didn't say anything, just stared. "I left everything," Kweku said. "The house, the business. Even my last name, if that's what it takes. Why? She asked, her voice cracking. Because love is enough, he said. But only if I choose it, and I choose you. She shook her head slowly, unsure if she believed him. Then he knelt, opened the red velvet box, and looked up at her like she was his only answer. I don't have much now, but I swear you'll have all of me. No lies, no noise, just us. Amina didn't say yes right away. She stood in the doorway, staring down at the ring like it was made of fire. Her heart was screaming yes, but her mind, her wounded, cautious mind, was still bleeding from the way his mother had humiliated her. She had never felt so exposed in her life. I don't want to be a reason for you to hate your family, she whispered. You're not, Kweku replied gently. They gave me a name. You gave me meaning. Amina finally stepped aside and let him in. The apartment was small, barely 2 rooms, with a mattress on the floor and a plastic chair by the window. But when Kweku sat down, it felt more like home than his mother's gold-covered mansion ever did. They talked for hours. She told him everything, how after she left his house she cried in the matatu all the way home, how her cousin told her to forget city men, and how deep down she thought maybe Kweku was different. But she was scared, because girls like her, they didn't end up with men like him. They ended up forgotten, but Kweku listened. Not like a man trying to fix things, but like a man ready to fight for them. So when she finally said yes, it wasn't dramatic. No violins, no crowd. Just 2 hands shaking in silence, and a ring sliding onto her finger still warm from his pocket. They decided to marry quietly. No expensive ceremony, just a court wedding and a small prayer at the mosque. Amina wore a soft cream-colored dress, stitched by her aunt. Kweku wore a plain kaftan. No suits, no spotlight, but the moment a photo of the wedding hit social media, thanks to one of Kweku's old friends tagging him, all hell broke loose. Madam. Nyasha saw it within minutes. She was at a fundraiser for one of her charity foundations when her phone buzzed with the image. Kweku standing with Amina, smiling like the richest man on earth, both of them under a cheap white tent. She didn't even finish her wine. She stormed out and made one phone call, one to her lawyer. If he thinks he can disgrace my family name, she hissed into the phone, he has no idea who he's dealing with. Within 48 hours, things changed. Kweku's bank accounts froze. His old office had security issues and refused him entry. People who used to call him Sir stopped picking up his calls. The house he was renting in Ngong suddenly came under scrutiny. Paperwork problems, they claimed. Even the small consultancy project he was working on got cancelled without warning. Amina noticed it first, how tired his eyes looked, how the light in him started dimming. Talk to your mother, she urged gently one night. Just to clear the air. I'd rather beg on the streets than bow to that woman again, he replied, jaw tight. But deep down he knew she was punishing him, starving him of everything, not to destroy him completely, but to force him back, to break him. And Amina. She started to feel the cracks. Vendors in the market who once smiled now whispered. Her cousin's landlord suddenly doubled the rent. The word spread fast. Kweku married down, they said. His mama cut him off. That girl's a curse. She pretended not to hear, but at night she'd cry quietly on the thin mattress, careful not to wake him. Then one day Kweku came home with a bruised face. What happened? Amina gasped, rushing to him. He sat down, wincing. Some guys followed me after a meeting, said I should know my place, said the city doesn't like rebels. She sat beside him, heart thudding. We need to leave this place. Kweku nodded. We will. But as he leaned into her embrace, neither of them noticed the small black car parked across the street. Inside, a man on the phone said, Yes, madam, I found them. Do you want me to move in? The next morning, Amina woke up to a loud knock at the door, sharp, urgent, like someone was there for war. She rushed to the window and saw 2 uniformed officers standing outside with a stern-faced man in a black suit. Kweku, she whispered, shaking him awake. There are police outside. He shot up immediately. His heart dropped. The knock came again, louder this time. Mr. Kweku Mboya, open this door. We have a warrant. A warrant? For what? Amina asked, panicking. Kweku grabbed his shirt and moved to the door. "Stay behind me," he muttered, as Tiu Hai's. Soon as he opened it, they pushed in at no hesitation. One officer shoved a paper in his face. "You're being investigated for fraud and illegal misappropriation of funds tied to your former company." Kweku's mouth dropped open. "That's a lie. What funds? I haven't touched that place since I left." The man in the suit stepped forward calmly. "You'll have a chance to explain, but you'll need to come with us." Amina tried to speak, but the officers already had cuffs on Kweku's wrists. "You don't need these," he said, humiliated. "I'm not running." But they ignored him, dragging him past nosy neighbors who peeked through their curtains, already gossiping. As they led him to the car, Amina ran after them barefoot. "This is a mistake. He didn't steal anything. He walked away from that company." The man in the suit finally turned to her, expression unreadable. "You should tell your husband next time not to cross people who built him." And just like that, Kweku was gone. Amina stood in the street, trembling, helpless, and heartbroken. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Blogs posted headlines like, "Former tycoon's son arrested for corporate fraud. How love for a poor girl brought down a legacy." Nyasha didn't release a statement. She didn't need to. She just watched from the sidelines as everything crumbled. It was exactly what she wanted. Kweku humiliated, Amina isolated. But Amina didn't break. Not completely. She visited the police station every single day, brought food, talked to officers, pleaded with anyone who would listen. And Kweku, sitting behind cold bars, saw in her something stronger than he ever imagined. Not pity, not desperation, but fire. One night, after the lawyer finally allowed them to talk for 10 minutes, Amina leaned close to the glass. "They want to bury you," she said softly. "But they don't know we're seeds." Kweku managed a tired smile. "You still believe in me?" She pressed her hand to the glass. "I don't just believe in you, I believe in us." He swallowed hard, eyes watering for the first time since his arrest. After that visit, Amina went to work. She took her story to the media. She contacted journalists, sent emails, and even spoke on a late-night radio show anonymously, describing the corruption, the greed, and how Nyasha was trying to destroy her own son for power. The interview went viral. People started talking. The public turned curious. Why would a mother frame her own child? Is this just class warfare? Is love really the crime here? And then, a miracle happened. An anonymous whistleblower, someone from inside Nyasha's own company, leaked documents showing that Kweku had left with a clean slate. No fraud, no missing funds. Everything had been forged after he left. The news hit like thunder. Kweku was released on bail within 48 hours. The police dropped the charges quietly, embarrassed. And Nyasha? Well, someone from the tax office suddenly showed up at her mansion. Amina waited outside the station as Kweku walked out, free again, thinner but still standing. She ran to him, and this time he didn't try to hold back tears. "You fought for me," he whispered. She held his face gently. "You'd do the same." But even as they embraced, a shadow lingered, because Nyasha wasn't finished. She never lost. She couldn't lose. The days after Kweku's release felt like breathing again, but the air still carried a bitter scent, like the calm before a second worse storm. Amina could feel it in her bones. They moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in the outskirts of Rongai. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. No guards, no marble floors, no chandeliers, just love, resilience, and the bare minimum. They didn't care. They had peace, or at least they thought they did. Then one morning, as Amina stepped outside to get groceries, she noticed a familiar black Prado parked across the street. It didn't move, just sat there like a beast watching from the grass. Her stomach twisted. She'd seen that car before. When she came back, it was gone. She didn't tell Kweku. He was finally laughing again, working on building a small digital marketing firm with a friend. She didn't want to weigh him down with her fears, but she should have, because the next blow wasn't just aimed at Kweku, it was at her. One Thursday morning, while she was preparing breakfast, there was a knock. This time it wasn't police, it was a woman. Tall, immaculate, with a cruel smile and sharp red lipstick. Behind her stood two men in suits. "You must be Amina," the woman said sweetly. "Yes," Amina replied cautiously. The woman handed her a brown envelope. "You're being sued for defamation, emotional distress and slander against Madame Nyasha Mboya." "What?" Amina breathed, nearly dropping the hot kettle in her hand. "You'll need to appear in court next week. Failure to comply will result in a bench warrant." She turned and left without another word. Amina stood frozen. She opened the envelope and read the accusations. Lies. Twisted versions of her interviews, screenshots edited to fit a narrative. Claims that Amina had started a smear campaign to damage a respected woman's social standing and emotional well-being. Kweku came home later and found her sitting on the floor, the envelope wide open, hands shaking. He dropped everything. "What happened? Are you okay?" She held out the letter with glassy eyes. Kweku read it once, then again. Then he sat back against the wall and let out a breath that sounded like it carried all his years of trust in his mother. "She's not just trying to hurt us," Amina whispered. "She wants to erase me." Kweku stood slowly. "Then we give her what she doesn't expect. Which is," he looked her dead in the eye, "we fight, publicly, with everything we've got." The next day, they found a human rights lawyer who had seen the viral interview Amina gave weeks ago. He didn't. "Charge them a coin. I've dealt with people like Nyasha before," he said, adjusting his thick-rimmed glasses. "She has money, but she's arrogant. That's her weakness." They filed a countersuit. Harassment, attempted defamation, and abuse of influence. It was risky, but it was the only way. The case blew up in the media. Suddenly, Kweku and Amina were everywhere. Morning radio, TikTok breakdowns, trending Twitter hashtags. Justice for Kweku. Poor girl rich mess. Some called it a modern-day David versus Goliath. Others mocked them. But everyone was watching. Then something unexpected happened. Women, dozens of them, started coming forward. Former employees of Nyasha's charity, former house helps, even a niece she had blacklisted from inheritance. They all said the same thing. She destroys what she cannot control. The pressure mounted. And for the first time in years, Nyasha was losing grip of her image. But she wasn't done yet. She sent one final message, not a text, not a call. But a manila envelope slipped under their apartment door in the middle of the night. Inside was a single photograph, Amina, standing by the road, visibly pregnant. A date scribbled underneath it, 7 months ago, and a note. "Is the baby even his?" Kweku stared at the photograph in silence. The dim morning light barely touched his face as he held the image of Amina, her hand resting unconsciously on her belly as she waited for a boda near the pharmacy. There was nothing scandalous about it, nothing shameful. But the message, it was poison. Is the baby even his? The question twisted through his mind like smoke in a burning hut. It wasn't that he believed it, not for a second. But he knew the world wouldn't think like him. His mother's power didn't just lie in her money. It lay in her ability to turn whispers into weapons. Amina sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling in her lap. Her face was pale, eyes locked on the floor. "I didn't tell you yet because I wanted to be sure," she said, voice barely a whisper. "I found out 3 weeks ago. I wanted us to be stable before I said anything." Kweku dropped to his knees in front of her, gently cupping her face in his hands. "This is our baby," he said softly. "Our future. And nobody, not even that woman, gets to shame you for it." Amina nodded slowly, the tears finally slipping down her cheeks. But the media didn't wait. Somehow, and they both knew how, the photo hit the blogs within 24 hours. The headlines were brutal. Kweku's village bride pregnant. But who's the father? From virgin to liar. Is Amina's image a lie? Nyasha Mboya vindicated, new photo sparks doubt. The court case was only a week away, and now public opinion had started to split. Some believed Amina, some didn't. Others didn't care. Either way, they just wanted the drama to continue. What Nyasha hadn't anticipated, however, was the very thing she always ignored. People like Amina were watching. And they were tired. A movement started. Women who had been silenced, bullied, and shamed for being poor, unmarried, or unfit started posting their own stories online. Hashtags like "She deserved," "Respect and not your scandal" flooded the internet. Amina became more than a pregnant village girl. She became a symbol, quiet strength in the face of loud hate. And Nyasha, for the first time in her life, she was cornered. When the court date arrived, the courtroom was packed. Media, influencers, activists, even a few government officials, who suddenly wanted to support the truth. Amina stood beside Kweku in her loose-fitting brown dress, her stomach just slightly visible now. Her face was calm, unreadable. Nyasha entered like a queen, sunglasses, a silk wrapper, 4 bodyguards. But her face, it wasn't confident. It was cold, tired, cracking. The lawyers began. Amina's lawyer wasted no time. He laid out everything: the forged documents, the harassment, the media manipulation, and now the cruel pregnancy smear, Your Honor, he said, holding up the photo. Even if this child were not his, and we all know it is, what gives this woman the right to weaponize a pregnancy? To humiliate a mother-to-be for headlines? Nyasha's lawyer tried to spin it. Our client only wanted to protect her son from being exploited by a scheming outsider. But it backfired. People in the courtroom hissed, shook their heads. Even the judge narrowed his eyes. By the time Amina took the stand, the room was holding its breath. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She just said, "I loved him before he had nothing. I will love him even if we end up with nothing again. And I will love this child with everything I have, no matter who believes in me." And just like that, Nyasha's empire of control began to fall. The court ruled in Amina's favor. The judge, stern and unmoved by status, read his verdict in a voice that echoed like thunder through the hushed courtroom. This court finds the harassment and defamation claims against Mrs. Amina Yusuf to be not only baseless, but malicious in nature. In return, we find the plaintiff, Madam Nyasha Mboya, guilty of willful harassment, slander, abuse of wealth and influence, and emotional damage inflicted upon both the defendant and her husband, Mr. Kweku Mboya. He paused. The court orders Madam Mboya to pay 8.5 million shillings in damages. A public apology is also required. Failure to comply will result in imprisonment for contempt. There was no applause, just silence, heavy, relieved. Nyasha sat frozen, her carefully painted lips slightly parted, her world crashing around her like glass. She had underestimated the girl, the same girl she once called a charity case. Now she stood taller than her, unbreakable. As she left the courtroom, cameras swarmed. Journalists fired questions like bullets. Nyasha kept walking, her bodyguards struggling to keep up. She didn't answer a word, but Amina did. One reporter shoved a mic in her face. "How does it feel to win against one of the most powerful women in Nairobi?" Amina smiled gently. It wasn't about winning, it was about being heard. That moment went viral across Africa. Kweku and Amina didn't stay in the city. A month. Later they packed what little they had and moved back to Amina's home village. With help from supporters who had followed their story online, they opened a small tech and literacy center. For village girls who were told they'd never amount to anything, they called it Nguvu ya Kweli, the power of truth. Kweku worked with his hands now, fixing up old laptops, teaching coding basics to teenage boys who'd never seen a real computer. He looked at Peace, Lena, happier, and Amina. She glowed, not just from the pregnancy, but from purpose. She taught English in the mornings and helped with the new garden behind the center in the afternoons. Every child who walked through their doors felt like family, and every time someone asked how she got here, she told them the truth. I fell in love with a man. His mother tried to break me, but I remembered who I was before she ever saw me. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the tall acacia trees, Amina stood by the porch, rubbing her belly. Kweku joined her, placing his hand over hers. "You still think love is enough?" she asked, teasing him. He smiled. "No, I think you were enough. I just had to catch up." She leaned into him, quiet for a moment. Then she said the words that still made him weak. "I forgive her." Kweku turned, surprised. "After everything?" "She hurt me," Amina said, "but hating her would have made me like her. And I want our child to grow up learning that strength isn't always about fighting back. Sometimes it's about letting go. He kissed her forehead. The night was quiet. The world had finally stopped screaming. And in a small village on the edge of nowhere, a poor girl who was once insulted, shamed, and almost erased became the story no one could ignore. She wasn't just a girl anymore. She was a woman who stood her ground and won.